Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. In the last lecture, we have defined sets, which are well-defined collection of distinct objects, and we have seen this kind of sets acts as a primitive algebraic structure over which we could reason about different types of properties. In today's and in the subsequent lecture, we will see how we can define certain operations or relations within those objects and what are the meaning of it, how we can define certain ordering of those objects and how we can relate them. To start with, often we have seen that sometimes a particular set may not be representative in all scenarios. For example, when we try to go from integer set to real set to complex sets, we see there are two certain parameters which define a particular object in the complex set. For example, in a complex number, there is a real part and there is an imaginary part. So this real and imaginary pair defines a particular complex number. Similar is the case when you are trying to represent a two-dimensional point. Their x coordinate and the y coordinate together represents one entity or object of that particular type. For n dimensions, we have n points to represent a particular location. So these collections, how do we define certain algebraic structure for these collections? The first basic primitive that we extend from set is known as Cartesian product. So it says that Cartesian product or cross product of two sets are defined as that we define sets A cross B as the pair A comma B such that A belongs to set A and B belongs to set B. Now try to relate it with the complex number where we try to map two real parts. A is one real and B is an imaginary part. But these two can be real values. So there my A and B are from real number set. So therefore each particular complex number is also such kind of a pair. So is the case for 2D points. So in general, we say that we have a k-fold Cartesian product if we can define this k element set pair and set up all those for where all xi belongs to ai, each of this set. So in general, by terminology, we call the elements of A cross B as ordered pairs. If there are three sets for which we are taking a cross product, we call it triple. And for k sets, when we take a cross product of k sets, so each element in that cross product is a k number of elements, each from an individual set. x1 belongs to a1, x2 belongs to a2 and so on. So we call this ordered pair as tuples. Here look at the term ordered because if I distort the order and take the product in a different way, let's say B cross A, then the sequence in which I will get this pair will be B comma A. That is, the first element will be from set B and the second element will be from set A. So that's why this order matters and we call it as an ordered k-tuple. So this is how we define Cartesian products in order to express certain objects which relates between two sets of domains. So again, the cardinality or the number of elements in this cross product, as you have already identified, that if each of these particular sets have n1, n2 up to nk, so you can see it's a set for all elements from one pair with the other and we are taking a tuple. So the total number of elements that will be present in this cross product or Cartesian product, k-fold Cartesian product, is the product of n1 to nk. We say that two of these points or this particular pair in A cross B are equal when the first element which belongs to A is equal to C, the first element which belongs to A, and B is equal to D. Again, think of the complex number or 2D point. When we say that 2 points indicate the same location or the same complex number. So for location, when my x coordinate matches with the x coordinate and the y coordinate matches with the y coordinate. For the complex number, when my real part matches with the real part of the other and the imaginary part matches with the imaginary part of the other. However, you can also notice that this is not the universal case, because it may so happen that my real part is more than the real part of some other complex number, whereas my imaginary part is less than the imaginary part of the other number. So, can we then say that one complex number is more or one complex number is high than the other complex number, or a point where x coordinate is more, y coordinate is less than the other point? Can we do that? So, which introduces certain kind of concept that where we cannot say that something follows other, or we cannot determine some kind of a total ordering of that. In this lecture and the next lecture, we will try to see that how such kind of Cartesian product and the relations that we are trying to define, how we can order them, how we can tell them that they are equivalent, they are equal, those points, and so on. So for that, this is a definition that we need in future, that two particular cross product terms are equal when each of the tuple entities are equal. For k tuples, each of the location of the tuple should be equal to the other. As I have already mentioned you that A cross B is not equal to B cross A, because the ordering matters, and to be equal we need every position of the tuple should match with every other position, whereas A cross B is an element from A comma an element from B, B cross A are the element from B followed by element of A. Let's say A and B, all elements are distinct and different, then these two you can obviously find out that they could not be equal, because all the elements will not be the same. Even if one element differs, I say that these two sets are not equal as per the equality of the set is concerned. However, you can see that the number of elements or the cardinality of A cross B is equal to B cross A, because it's just the cardinality of set A multiplied with cardinality of set B, and this is cardinality of A into B is same as cardinality of B into A. So, the number of elements that we construct in each of these particular cross product sets would be the same. There are certain other properties that we may define over this Cartesian product. For example, if you take a Cartesian product over null set, so it means that you have pairs A cross null, there are no pairs in the other one set, then in the outcome you should not have any pairs. Let me illustrate it a bit more. We are only bothered of the pairs where A belongs to first set, B belongs to second set, as per the definition of Cartesian product. Now if one set is empty, we will not get such a pair at all, because there is no element in the second set, and as per the definition I need elements from both sets. So therefore this cross product is empty. Cross product is also distributive over intersection. So you can easily say that as we have proved in our previous class, that if an element x comma y belongs to this, that means x belongs to A and your y belongs to B intersection C, which means x belongs to A and y belongs to B and y belongs to C as well. So all of them are and, so therefore I can say x belongs to A and x belongs to B, and x belongs to A and x belongs to C. So therefore this follows. Similar for union case as well. So here, unlike the previous proofs that we have done to prove this kind of a property, we start with x comma y, a pair belongs to this particular set because it's a cross product, so it is a pairs of all elements. And try to prove that x comma y also belongs to this and vice versa. So we will find some other properties like A intersection B cross C. Here also the cross can be distributed over intersection and cross can be distributed over union as well. So please ignore these two brackets, this is a mistake after C here and after C here. If we take a symmetric difference of A minus B with a cross C, that is also can be distributed. So this is due to the fact that A minus B is basically A intersection B bar. So if you now take the similar kind of analogy that xy belongs to this, you will eventually find that xy belongs to this as well. So I request you to go through the formal proofs by yourself, because this is very intuitive to learn, but informally you should need to prove it, as we have shown 1-2 cases in our set theory class. So you can prove it in the similar manner. With that background in our mind, let us now define what we call as relations. See that now when we have a cross product, we are already relating the elements of one set with the other set. That's why we are pairing them up. So relation is nothing but, instead of seeking for all possible pairing that I get from A cross B, I choose a subset of them and relate it with someone. So to give you a very naive example, you can say that in this whole world, there are a set of people which are your family, or in your family, or in your extended family. There are a set of peoples which is in my family, in my extended family. So there may be overlaps in that. However, that particular set, which are the members of the family, forms a relation from all the members in the world. So therefore, if there is a relation between A and B, two persons in the world, I am not taking all possible pairs which are possible in the world. I am only taking those pairs into, say, my family, that who are related by blood, or who are related by in our extended family. So this motivates us to define certain kind of relations, which is the core topic of this lecture, that a relation, and obviously a binary relation, since we are relating two sets between two sets A cross B, is defined as a relation, we are calling it rho, is a subset of A cross B. And that's what just now I discussed. Among all possible combinations of elements in A and B, I am just choosing a subset of combinations and defining a relation over it, that this is my family members. Two of them you pick up, they are related. Some other set of some other row, let's say row dash, will be some other person's family members. So we call it an ordered pair. AB belongs to rho. That means A is related by relation rho with B, and also we call A rho B. Both are equivalently we use as per notation. Then the element A in set A is said to be related to the element B in set B. So any subset of A cross A, which we also call, since it's a A cross A, we can also call it A square as per notational sense, is a relation over A. So if you look intuitively, that we have already used such kind of a relation in our algebraic system. Suppose integers, when we try to add integers, your addition is or rather than instead of addition, let us try to think that when we try to say one integer is less than the other integer. So this less than is a relation, right? It takes two integers and try to relate them with something called less than. So all possible sets of integers, if you take, all of them are not less than each other. Now if I say less than equal to relation, then it says that if you take any two numbers, so someone will be less than equal to someone. So this kind of relations we will say, and in particular, let's say in the relations of the persons in the world. So in a person in the world and let's say that be A, and the person in the world again be A. So two persons I can take from the same set and build upon a relation of it. So remember that it's a subset that among all possible pairs that we can combine, I am only interested to those pairs which satisfy certain rule, which is called the relation that I define. Here, if the relation is equal to A cross B, we call it as an universal relation. So it means that every pairing is possible with A comma B, this order. Okay. Now coming to the count of this relation, as we can see that A cross B, if A has M elements and B has N elements, then A cross B, this can be a subset which comprises of M into N elements. So therefore, since a relation is a subset of A cross B, so how many possible relations would be there? So it could be any, I can take none, I can take one from this A cross B, I can take two elements from this A cross B, so two pairs I can take in this relation, and so on. So therefore, I can have all possible subsets of A cross B is the total number of different relations, binary relations that are possible. So that is nothing but 2 to the power of mn, since mn is the number of elements present in A cross B. So it will be the number of powered sets that I can form with A cross B set, or every member of that powered set is one relation. Let us take an example to illustrate. First, let us take an example which says that A is a set of 1, 2 and 3, whereas B is a set comprising of A and B. So the Cartesian product says that A cross B would be one member from this and one member from this for all. So therefore 1A, 2A, 3A, 1B, 2B, 3B. Whereas if you see B cross A, it says the first element in the pair should be from B, the second element would be from A. So all possible pairs A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3. Now it is obvious that A cross B is not equal to B cross A if A is not equal to, even if A is equal to 1, for any value of A and B, it is not possible, because you cannot relate each pair with the other for the first position as well as the second position. So these two are not equal definitely. However, A cross B cardinality you can see 6, because 3 into 2 here, and B cross A is 2 into 3 will be the same. Now if I consider some relations, there would be 2 to the power 6 possible relations, because among these pairs I can choose 3 pair and form a relation, I can choose 4 pair and form a relation, I can choose nothing and say it's a null relation, I can choose everything and say it's a relation, because it should be a subset of A cross B. So therefore there are 2 to the power 6 possible subsets, hence 2 to the power 6 possible different relations, binary relations from in A cross B, relating A, the elements of A with the elements of B. Some relations could be, as I said, that we could have 3 members, we could have 4 members in the relation and choose it. Okay. The relation that we define is basically a rule which is valid over these pairs that I take. So one is related to A as per relation rho 1. Here 1 is related to B as per relation rho 1. Whereas here 3 is related to A as per relation rho 2. And so on. So with the definition of relations that we have learned, let us try to find out that what kind of properties and types of relations of a set can be possible. So we define a relation over a set A, meaning that since you are defining the relations with the elements within set A, so you need to relate 2 elements of the same set. So therefore the relation is obviously a subset of 2 elements chosen from the same set. We said A cross A with a cardinality n. Firstly, how many such possible relations can we produce? If it is A cross B, A having m elements, B having n elements, then the possible number of different relations that I can have is all possible subsets. So it is 2 to the power mn. So for A cross A, it will be 2 to the power n into n, which is 2 to the power n square. Now let us go for the first kind of category of a relation. So we call a relation rho is reflexive when for all x in A, I have this in my relation. So again, I am giving you a very naive example to explain this. See, I know myself. Let's say the relation is that whether I know me or not. I know myself is a relation. So everybody knows himself. So therefore, let's say x comma x is in that relation. X knows x. Right? So this means that if you say relation rho to be reflexive, it means that all the pairs, remember, all elements in A should be in the relation. So if A has n elements, there could be n such pairs already taken into this relation subset that you construct from A cross A. So suppose A is equal to 1, 2, 3. So you have 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3 into this row. If all of them are present, then this is reflexive. The immediate question comes is that since we are already relating with the count, so how many such relations are possible? So I give you a number. Now, if you think carefully that a relation is basically any subset of A cross A. It could be of 3 members, it could be of 4 members, that is 4 pairs, it could be of 5 pairs, it could be of any number of pairs. So there are n square pairs, I could have nothing, or I could have all n square pairs. But among them, to be reflexive, you have to take all the n pairs, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3 and so on. So there are remaining n square minus n pairs which you can take or cannot take. There are 2 options. So all the relations that will be reflexive must have pairs 1, 1, 2, 2 up to nn. Now the remaining n square minus 2 pairs, since you have a choice that you could keep it inside the relation and you could not keep it as well. So there are total 2 to the power n square minus n number of reflexive relations possible in the set A with n elements. The second type of relation is symmetric. So I say that let 2 elements xy belong to set A. Now I say that a relationship rho, which is defined as a subset from this A cross A, so 2 elements I take from A cross A, is symmetric if every pair of elements in the x cross A, if I take one element inside the relation, this one pair inside the relation, I will also have the reverse pair into it. Remember, xy and yx are not equal, as I have already mentioned you. To be equal, x should be equal to y and y should be, so x should be equal to y so that these two are equal. But this is not the case for all different pair xy. So it means that, for example, again a naive example, let's say person x is a brother of person y. So therefore this brother relationship, the reverse thing is also holds. So y is also then a brother of x, maybe elder, maybe younger. I am not saying about the age, but I am saying x is a brother of y. My relationship is brother, whether 2 elements are brothers or not. So if I take xy into the relation, then must be yx should be the relation. So x is a brother of y should be also a brother of x. So what does it mean? That it means to choose you a relation where the entities are relatable by any order. So you are choosing such kind of a relation here, which is a symmetric. So symmetricity told you that you choose the set of relations in such a way to have symmetric going, that each of them are related in any order. How many of them are possible? Let me give you the answer, which is 2 to the power n square plus n by 2. So see that how we shall count it. First of all, there are nc2 different pairs possible where these two are different. nc2 number of pairs are possible. And in this nc2 number of pairs, if you take one, you have to take the other pair. So nc2 pairs, if you take xy, you have to take yx. If you take xz, you have to take zx. And there remains that if you take x and x together, that one taking x and x means that you have take the flipped relation also, right? So therefore there are nc2 plus n number of elements that some you can choose or not choose. So nc2 plus n number of elements you can choose or not choose. So therefore 2 to the power nc2 plus n gives rise to this formula. So to illustrate that, if you take xx, it is symmetric. If you take xy, it will be symmetric if you include yx. So how many such xy pairs can be possible? So these many choices you can take, that is nc2. And how many xx pairs are possible? That is n. So among these, you can take one or you cannot take one. So in this nc2, from nc2 pairs, if you take one, automatically I include the reverse part. That's why it is not n square, it is nc2, choosing. So the total count will be 2 to the power nc2 plus n, which is 2 to the power n square plus n by 2. So I define a relation rho to be transitive if there are 3 elements in set A over which I am forming the relation. For all three elements, I can define that x is related to y is related to z. So these two relations are present in my relation set. Then xz relation should also be inside it. So that's why I call it transitive, that I could transit my relation over an intermediate point. So x is related to y is related to z, gives me the freedom to relate x with z as well. So that is the transitive relation. Just think of the less than relation. Let's say I choose a set and I define a relation that a number is less than other number. So if x is less than y is less than z, definitely x will be less than z. So the numbers inside this, the pairs inside this relations are connected with less than. So 1 is less than 9, 9 is less than 100, so 1 must be less than 100. So 1 and 100 should also be in. So this is what do we mean by transitive. Interestingly, if you try to look for how many number of such transitive relation possible, still it is an open problem, and there are no closed formula, just like the previous one for symmetric and reflexive. There are no closed formula till now which says that how many such transitive, only transitive, if I try to count, how many such transitive relations, binary relations over set A can be possible. There is other type of relation which we call as antisymmetric. So antisymmetric relation, rho is said to be antisymmetric if for all xy, two different element in x, in set A, if I take, if xy is inside that relation and yx is inside that relation, then x must be equal to y. So what does it mean? It means that either you take xx, you cannot take two different element inside the relation, because whenever you try to take two different element inside the relation and you try to relate it with the other way also, then it must be the case that all x and y are same. So reflexive gives us certain kind of property where to relate one element with that. Symmetric says that it's kind of a class where you are trying to say that the order of the relationship doesn't matter, only the property matters. So x is related to y immediately follows that the reverse thing also is true. Transitive says to transit or to transmit your relationship through a pivotal point or via other. Antisymmetric says that you can order your relation. Because let's say your x is related to y. So I say that I have an order going from x towards y. Just try to think of an arrow going from x towards y. The moment I take an arrow from y to x, I immediately say no, that you can only take if your x is equal to y. What does it signify? It signifies that I cannot order the elements in both ways. Either I say that your x should follow y, or I will say my y should follow x, but not both. When I say both will happen, that means you are doing with the same element. So that's why this particular property in the later part or in subsequent lectures, we will see that this property is very much needed to make the set of elements follow some order. The immediate question now comes is that how many such antisymmetric relations possible? Let me give you the answer first, then let us think of reasoning it out. See, what happens here? What you cannot take? You cannot take xy and yx together when your x and y are different. However, you can take xx when both are same, or you can take either of them. You can keep only xy, you can keep yx, but you cannot keep both when x and y are different. So how many choices do you have? You have choosing xy only, choosing yx only, or choosing neither. In the logical sense, look at this relation. When this relation will be true, if the antecedent, this part is a failure, so I will not choose any one of them, so choose only one, or neither choose any one. Or this relation is also true if your x is equal to y and then you choose xx. So therefore, element xx can either be included or excluded. Therefore, there are n number of such pairs, so 2 to the power n, and for each such inclusion, including a different element can have 3 possibilities. Only take xy, or take yx, or take neither xy nor yx. What if we take both? Whenever we take both, we have already counted that, because whenever we take both, it implies that for asymmetry to hold x equal to y, we have counted it by xx. So 2 to the power n into, there are 3 options, and in these 3 options we have nc2 possibilities of different pairs. So therefore 3 to the power nc2 is the number of choices that we have for these 3 options. So the total count of asymmetric relations we have is 2 to the power n into 3 to the power nc2. You can verify yourself all these counts by taking a small 2 element or 3 element sets and can see that what happens. Since all these definitions are with respect to for all and logically we define it, so the counter definition of all these types, when we say that a relation is not reflexive, not symmetric, not transitive, not antisymmetric, is just a jugglery in the logic. So I say that rho is irreflexive when I put a not here. So what does this logically means? As we have already studied, that for all x will be there exist and this not will be put up here. So there exists x in A such that xx doesn't belong to the relation. So what does it mean? It means that I left out one possibility of keeping xx. So either I left out 1 1 or I left out 1 2 2 or I left out all of them, but at least one I have left out. That means that the relation that you have constructed is irreflexive. Asymmetric says that, again just try to negate this. So there exists a pair where I included that pair and the other pair does not belong to it. So it says that for all pairs, if I include x comma y pair, then it automatically implies me to include y comma x, because it's such a relation that it does not hold for the order. It just says x is related to some way with y, and the vice versa also holds in that case. I am here just refuting that vice versa, so I will put only one of them, either xy in there or yx. So for there exists an xy where x and y are from A, so I put one pair but not the other. Non-transitive means I get a set of 3 elements from A, where I have x related to y, y related to z in the relation, but I cannot put x related to z in that relation. Similarly, not antisymmetric says that there exists a pair where you took these 2 different ordered pairs, though x is not equal to y. So this is my antisymmetric case. Now tell me one thing, that is not antisymmetric equivalent to symmetric? So think it as an exercise, that is telling not antisymmetric equivalent to symmetric or not? Okay, so this is food for thought for you. So we have till now defined certain kind of types of relations and as well as certain kind of relations, but let us take practical examples. I kept on giving you some naive examples over the relationships, family and all. Here are some practical examples and practical relations that we could consider over sets. So reflexive and symmetric but not transitive. Check out this relation over the set of integers, where I take a pair in the relation when the multiplication of that pair is greater than equal to 0. It is reflexive since x into x, if I take the xx pair, so x square is always greater than equal to 0, because even if x is negative, x square is positive. Symmetric because xy will be equal to yx definitely, since it's a set of integers. But it is not transitive if you take x equal to a positive number, y equal to 0 and z equal to a negative number. Check out this one. So xy is equal to 0, which is greater than equal to 0. Yz is equal to 0, so it is also greater than equal to 0. However, x and z are negative. So therefore, there exists a pair that xy and yz belongs to this relation or satisfying this relation, but xz is not, so it is not transitive. Symmetric and transitive but not reflexive. This one. So let us define a relation that it's a pair when ay is greater than 0 and x and y are from the real number. So this will be real R. So how does it satisfy? Let us see this. It is not reflexive obviously for x equal to 0, because for x equal to 0, x square will be 0. It is symmetric because xy equal to yx definitely, and it is transitive because xz, how do you try to compute xz? You will try to compute xz by xy into yz by y square. And you see your xy is greater than 0 because I assume that xy and yz, this pair are already in my relation. I have to conclude that this is also in the relation. So these two are already greater than 0. This is also greater than 0. Y square is also positive. Therefore, I can say that this element is greater than 0. Reflexive and transitive but not symmetric, and you will see that you have to give such an example which also follows that it is anti-symmetric but not symmetric. Here we go. If we say less than equal to relation, it is reflexive because x is less than equal to x, definitely true. It is not symmetric because not for every element I could also take the reverse thing inside it. So for symmetry to happen, if I take xy, I can also include yx. So, but for 0.1 and 1.0, you see x less than y, but y not less than x, so yx relation is not valid. It is transitive because definitely x less than y and y less than equal to z is x less than equal to z. Not reflexive, not symmetric, not transitive, not antisymmetric. This one. Please check. If I try to relate two elements where one element or the later element is equal to the first element plus 1, y equal to x plus 1. So why it is not reflexive? If you try to relate two elements, x equal to x plus 1, not the case. Not symmetric because if you take x equal to y plus 1, y is not equal to x plus 1, or rather if you include xy, then y is related as x plus 1. And if you try to include, the symmetry says then you have to include yx too. But if you include yx, then your x is equal to y plus 1. This is false because in y is equal to x plus 1 means x equal to y minus 1. Not transitive because you cannot form a z equal to x plus 1 because z will be equal to y plus 1 to include yz. And to include xy, your y will be x plus 1, so it will finally be z equal to x plus 2, which does not satisfy. So this relation says that it does not satisfy reflexive, symmetric, transitive and antisymmetric, any one. So such a way you can also think of different kinds of practical relations that you encountered and try to see whether it's symmetric, it's transitive, it's reflexive or not. Only one property, if only reflexive, check this one. A person A knows person B. So a person A knows person A. It is reflexive. It is not symmetric because it does not make sense that a person A knows person B implies that the person B should also know person A. I know Sachin Tendulkar doesn't know me. So, not symmetric. Not transitive because a person A may know person B may know person C, but person A may not know person C. Only symmetric. Check out this. the relation rho says that a plus b equal to 5. I pair ab like that. Is it reflexive? No, because ab belongs to integer, set of integers. And to have this equal to 5, a must be 2.5. I am not taking that in this set. Is it transitive? A plus b equal to 5, b plus c equal to 5, then a plus c equal to 5 may not be the case. You will get ample examples. Let's say 2 plus 3 equal to 5, and then 3 plus 2 equal to 5, then 2 plus 2 is not equal to 5. But it is symmetric because a plus b equal to b plus a. So if you take ab pair, and then you are already bound to take ba pair, because ba pair also results the same thing and it should be in the relation. Transitive only proper subsets. Neither A is a proper subset of itself, so reflexivity cancels. If A is a proper subset of B, you cannot say B is also a proper subset of A, so symmetry is not valid. And then if A is a subset of B and B is a subset of C, then obviously A is a subset of C, so it's only a transitivity holds. Only antisymmetric? Think. I left it for you. Okay. So with reflexive, symmetric and transitive and antisymmetric, these definitions, now we shall see that practically where do we imply such kind of properties or types of relations in the algebraic structure or system. So we say that a relation is equivalent, or we say that relation is an equivalence relation if it is reflexive, symmetric and transitive. See, why we kept these three into it to say equivalent? As the name suggests that any two elements, you declare a relation and take any two elements, they are equivalent. So equivalent means an element is equivalent with itself. Definitely it should be the case by intuitive notion. So reflexivity must hold. An element is equivalent to some other elements if you choose such kind of a collection of equivalent elements. So therefore the other element can also be equivalent to the first element. So symmetricity must hold. And similarly, the equivalence, as per the name suggests and the intuition suggests, that if you say some element is equivalent with the other and the other is with the third one, then first and third should be the same. So it tries to define a particular closure which says that any two element you pick up, it will be equivalent. It has the same meaning. Take an example. I build a pair of elements where I say that their difference is divisible by 5. When I say their difference is divisible by 5, I mean that you check for all the properties here. It says that x minus x is equal to 0, which is divisible by 5. Symmetric because if x minus y is divisible by 5, then obviously y minus x, which is minus of x minus y, since it is from the set of integers, positive, negative, so therefore it should also be divisible by 5. X minus z is nothing but x minus y plus y minus z. Each of them in transitivity, I know that x minus y I have taken in my relation, y and z I have taken in my relation, so x and z is also divisible since each of them are divisible by 5. So these three hold. So x minus y divisible by 5. If this I choose as a relation and take xy pairs, so it is the case that this is an equivalence relation. Now comes a very interesting observation, that in symmetry we are saying that if I take xy pair into my relation, I will also take yx pair inside my relation. So my transitivity says if I take xy pair and yx pair, then I am bound to take xx pair, because by transitivity, if these two pairs are present, then xx pair will also be present. So do we need to define reflexive nature here? Because symmetric and transitive can do everything. Where is the fallacy? That why we are calling that an equivalence relation is such that we are defining it as symmetric, transitive as well as reflexive should hold. The reason is know that this symmetric and transitive does not mean reflexive always, because reflexive does not need anyone else in the set. So it can only do it by saying that for all x I do not need any y. You see that if I eliminate the reflexive nature and take it from symmetry and transitivity, I need to have another element associated with x. That may not be possible. So something can be reflexive without any need of any other element. So every element is related to that element itself. So therefore it does not automatically guarantee that symmetric and transitive will imply reflexive definition. As you can easily understand that when we say the notion of equivalence, as I have already explained you, that reflexive, symmetric and transitive says it's a closure, it's a set of closed objects where every pair you take it, they are equivalent, means they can be relatable by this relation in any order, first one with second one with first one, this way. So therefore it forms certain kind of clusters or classes which we call as equivalence class. If rho is an equivalence relation on A, then for each y, for each element y, remember, the equivalence class I denote by this is equal to all the elements such that these elements are equal. So what does this signify? That I will get a class where I could say that I could define that class within third brackets, and any member could be a representative, because if xy is present, then yx is also will be present in this class due to symmetry. So I can say this is also x third bracket. So all the members could be a representative and could be denoted by this, and all of them forms an equivalence class. So all the elements are equivalent inside that set. Let me give you an example to clear. The same example, for the clarity to write it everything, I said it divisible by 3 instead of 5. So see all this. So x and y belongs to set of integers, positive, negative as well as 0. So what are my equivalence class? 0. So which of the elements are related to 0? 0 itself, minus 3, minus 6 and so on. Because these elements gives rise to 0 as a remainder when we divide by 3. 1 as a remainder, these all elements. So these all elements are of the form 3k plus 1. 2 as a remainder, these all elements. So now see one thing, that can an element here, let's say plus 3 is related to an element 4? No, because x minus y should be divisible by 3. So 4 minus 3 is not divisible by 3. Whereas 4 minus 7 or 7 minus 4 is divisible. So therefore, I define class in such a way that you choose any 2 elements in the class, that particular relation is valid. You choose 2 different elements from the other class, the relation is not valid. Hence, we say that each of these members I could define the equivalence class as third brackets and say minus 3 forms the same equivalence class as 0 forms. Minus 6 forms the same equivalence class as formed by 0 and so on. And you see that each equivalence class is not equal, because if some of the elements are equal, then the whole class will merge and form a single class. Why? Because the intuition of equivalence. So if I say that one element from set A is equivalent to other element from set B, it means that since this follows reflexivity, symmetry and transitivity, so every element, so due to transitivity, some other elements will also be related to that element in other set. So if for example, consider for the time being, minus 3 is related to 1, then since 6 is related to minus 3 and minus 3 is related to 1, so 6 must be related to 1. So this whole set will merge if I find 2 different elements from 2 different sets are equivalent. So each class will be disjoint, so that it means that there are no overlap of elements. And every element in this XZ set, every element that we consider comes in some class. So therefore, the set Z is nothing but the combination of elements there in every class. So the first class union second class union third class gives me all elements Z, because each element I have put in somewhere. So the first thing comes from the definition of having equivalence class. The second thing needs a proof of this disjoints thing and the union being the same. We will do it in the next slide. So let us consider a theorem which says that rho forms an equivalence relation on A and xy belongs to A, then x itself is a member of the equivalence class I represented by x. Any element is a member of itself. Example, you have seen here that this class is 0, this member is there. That's why I can say that this particular equivalence class can be represented by any representative elements as my level. Why this is the case? See the definition. I say that an equivalence class y is all the element x such that xy are relevant. So if an element y belongs to y, then yy from the definition yy should be in the relation, and an equivalence relation already says that it is reflexive. So this property holds. So if rho is an equivalence relation, therefore xx should belong to rho, and xx should belong to rho by definition says x should belong to the equivalence class x. Very trivial one. Let us take the second one. There is if and only if. So I double if, it means if and only if. So both direction we need to prove. Let us try to prove the first direction, the if part. That if xy is forms an element in the equivalence relation, then these two classes are equivalent. As we intuitively discussed in the earlier slide, that two elements, if I can form that they are equivalent, then they belong to same class. Why that is the case? So I am assuming xy belongs to rho. So if I assume this, to prove these two classes are equivalent, so any element from this class, I have to show that that element also belongs to this class and vice versa. So first I took an element A from this class. This means, since this class is, by definition it means A comma x belongs to rho. See the definition again. This means x belongs to y means x comma y belongs to rho. The same thing I applied here. And as I have assumed xy belongs to rho, so this and this together says me ay belongs to rho, because this belongs to rho, this belongs to rho, rho is transitive, so a and y belongs to rho. So ay are related. Therefore, A belongs to Y. So I started with A belongs to the class X. I formulated that if this is the case, then A belongs to class Y. As per the set definition, I can say that this equivalence class is a subset of the other equivalence class. Similar manner, you can just see the other direction is also true, that if B is a element in the equivalence class Y, by definition By belongs to rho. Now By belongs to rho. By symmetry, I have xy belongs to rho can say me that yx also belongs to rho, because I have assumed this. So this will be true. And by belongs to rho. So by and yx both belongs to rho means bx belongs to rho. Transitivity. So B is a subset of this class as well. Therefore, I have started with B as a subset of Y. I reached B as a subset of X as well. So Y is a subset of X class. So I have proven that if xy belongs to rho, x and y are two elements from set A, then these two classes are equal. Now the only part, if these two classes are equal, then x and y should also be related. This is pretty simple, because to relate these two, x and y, I know that x is itself a member of the class x. Now this class x is exactly equal to y. So I replace this class x with y. Now what does this mean? As per the definition, it means x comma y belongs to rho. Check again the definition. An element x belongs to y means x comma y. It says that x comma y to be inside rho. So when I get x comma y to be inside rho, x belongs to y, I get x comma y to be inside rho, and that is what I want to prove here. The opposite direction, that is, given x class equal to y class, two elements x, y are related. The third one, the most interesting one. I would say that this class x is either fully equal to y, or I would say that these two classes are mutually disjoint. you have seen an example in the previous slide which says that when I say that the remainder is 0 is disjoint, this class is disjoint with the remainder 1 and so on. Now let us try to prove. How can I prove this? What I will do is that I will try to assume that let this, so I am saying that this equality happens or disjoint thing happens. I will try to see that if this is false, equality is false, then my disjoint must happen to have this theorem to be true. I will try to contradict that if my equality fails, as well as if I assume that disjoint doesn't hold, there is a common element between these two different classes. So equality fails means these classes are different, and I will assume there is a disjoint element, I lead to a contradiction. That will prove this third part of the theorem. So assume that these are disjoint, then this should hold, as I have just told, because this or this should hold. If otherwise, let us assume that this doesn't hold, that means there is an element x which belongs to both of them. If these are not disjoint mutually, there is a common element, which is u. Thus, u belongs to x. By symmetry, I can say xu belongs to rho. So, ux belongs to rho due to this formula, u belongs to x. So, xu also belongs to rho by symmetry. Now, u belongs to y2. So, I know that uy belongs to rho. So, this and these two using transitivity, xu and uy gives me xy belongs to rho. And xy belongs to rho gives me x equal to y, these two classes, because of I have already proven this using second proposition of the theorem. So, which gives me a contradiction that if either your two sets should be equal or it should be mutually disjoint. You cannot say my two sets are not equal even if they are mutually disjoint. So therefore it proves the third part of the theorem. So this actually validates the intuition behind the last example that we have shown here, that a particular relation is an equivalence relation if it breaks the whole set over which we are defining these relations into clusters in such a way that each cluster is an equivalence relation. No two clusters have an element common, and every cluster, if I take each of these clusters together, then it forms the total set. So let us try to, so what we have proven is that the two elements from the different clusters cannot be together. So either this cluster will be the same or it will be totally disjoint. Now the last part that I just told you, that how can we show that all this cluster of elements together form my total set. For this, you try to remember how we have defined the partition of a set in the previous lecture. We defined that a partition means that I will cut that set into different portions. I give you an example of the world map and countries. So you cut that into different sets, A1, A2, A3 and so on, where each of these particular pair of different sets are disjoint, and totally you get by you taking the union. So this is the definition of partition, which we already defined in the last class. Now an equivalence relation on a set induces a partition. This will indeed prove whatever we are trying to say over that example. It will induce a partition. Disjoint as well as union becomes the whole Z. So this is very straightforward once you understand this theorem, because it follows from I and last one. Why? Because an equivalence relation, it says that it induces a partition. Disjoint we have proven by 3. Now I say every element belongs to a member of that particular element. So this proves the fact that if I have taken all the elements of A, I have put in somewhere in some equivalence class. And all those equivalence classes are disjoint, therefore all elements are present and they are disjoint. So disjoint is the partition last condition, and all elements are present if I take the union of equivalence class is the first condition. So any equivalence relation, by looking into I and III, these two parts of the previous theorem, directly gives me that it induces a partition. Finally, I leave it to you that to prove the opposite thing, that any partition, if I do it, that means I just cut a set which are mutually disjoint into mutually disjoint subsets. where if I take the union of the subset, I get the whole set back again. That is indeed an equivalence relation. So each of these classes that I form out of those partitions are in equivalence relation. So if you think a little, it's very straightforward to show. You just have to define that relation in such a way that two elements belong to the same set if they are related. And then you can easily prove all possible properties of the equivalence relation over there. So therefore, in today's class, we are trying to get to a point where still now we have seen that how do we relate two members of different sets or maybe the same set? What are the properties of them which qualifies to make it called as a reflexive, symmetric or transitive relation? And how with respect to that we can form classes or the relationship objects where the equivalence notion holds, that any two of them you take, intuitively they should be equivalent. So in the next class, we will try to see that how we can improvise these notions and define different sets of definitions or different sets of relationships over this particular set. And thank you.